My name is Mike Barry. I am an agronomist for Frontier Agriculture and I work in the Scottish Borders and North Northumberland. Today we're going to be looking at winter barley, winter oilseed rape and winter wheat, which is where we're stood at the moment. This particular field that we're looking at today was drilled on the 10th of September after oilseed rape, so it's the first wheat. So it was drilled early, so the seed rate was about 250 seeds per square metre, anticipating a plant population of around 200 plants plus. And in this particular field, as it was drilled early, the plant population is about 220 plants per square metre. We currently have about 4 tillers per plant, therefore the shoot number is currently between 900 to 1,000 per square metre, which is perfect for this stage of the season. In terms of the plant growth stage, you can get them apart because they're so well tillered. You can see on here, get to one plant, this plant has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tillers on there. I'm just going to dig up some plants here and have a look at the root development. Now, as I said, because this was drilled early on the 10th of September, it's had a large number of days in which to grow over the autumn. Therefore, you'd expect the root development to be very good. And you can see on there is extensive rooting. There's some evidence of these light white roots there that there's some new growth on there, which is quite encouraging for this time of year because the soil temperature in this field at the moment is about 4 degrees. So you wouldn't expect to see a lot of root development at that temperature. However, there is a school of thought that because we've had excess winter rainfall, that the plants won't have put the roots down to find moisture because there will have been plentiful supplies in the top layers. So when you look at these older leaves, there's quite a lot of lesions of Septoria tritici on the older leaves. Because the disease is a function of accumulated temperature, the leaves that have been out for longer have been exposed to the fungus for longer, therefore they've expressed the symptoms of the disease. So this is one of the oldest leaves on the plant. As I say, it's got highest level of Septoria, and you can see the pycnidia, the little black spots in the leaf there quite clearly. Because this is Horatio, it's got high susceptibility to the yellow rust fungus. Because of the location here, there is not currently any disease in the crop at the moment, but that's not to say that couldn't develop as the season progresses. So the plan at the moment with regard to fungicide applications is to monitor what happens with the yellow rust, possibly the Septoria, and then just plan a normal T0 application aiming at the final leaf 4, which in this part of the world will probably be around about the end of March. However, further south, that could be 2 weeks ahead of that, possibly the middle of March. But if I did have yellow rust in here, I would have to go in possibly before the T0 timing with what we call a pre-T0 and apply a fungicide to control the rust. Because this field was drilled early on the 10th of September, we have a much longer period again to attract aphids, which can transmit the barley yellow dwarf virus. So what we did in anticipation of that is we treated this crop with Redigo Deter, which is an insecticide seed treatment which deters aphid feeding for up to 6 to 8 weeks. However, because we had such a mild November and December, we had to monitor the crop throughout that period to find out if we had aphids coming in after that. But fortunately, despite the mild weather, we didn't really find any aphids in here, but at the moment there is still potentially a risk of that happening. So in terms of the crop nutrition, as we stand here in the middle of February, my first thoughts for this crop are probably trace element deficiencies. This farm historically suffers from quite bad manganese deficiency. So the plan at the moment will be to add in a manganese foliar treatment either before the T0 or if you can hold off at the T0 time. And then because it's a first wheat after oilseed rape, I'm hoping that the soil mineral nitrogen levels are sufficient to keep the crop growing till possibly the middle of March. And because the tiller number and the plant population are optimum, I'm not keen to go on too early with too much nitrogen to encourage excess tillering. In terms of weed control, this field was treated in the autumn with a residual herbicide for meadowgrass and broadleaf weeds, which has been very effective, which is good. However, on the headland of this field, which is quite common in this area and many others, we have sterile brome here and some cleavers. And the plan with this will be to put on a herbicide called Broadway Star, which should be very effective at controlling that along with the cleavers, probably in the middle of March when the soil temperature warms up for the herbicide to be more effective. Right, so now standing in the crop of winter barley, this is a variety Pearl, which is grown in this particular farm on a malting contract. In terms of the general state of the crop, again, because we had such a good autumn, the barley has established well. This was drilled at a plant population of about 400 to 425 seeds, aiming for about 300 to 325 plants. And we have achieved that in here because the plant establishment is good. However, in this particular farm, there is very high peat levels in this particular field, which tends to lock up trace elements such as manganese. So there has been some localised plant loss in some areas, despite the fact that it had some manganese applied in the autumn. Because we've had such high winter rainfall levels, there's a significant risk that most of the nitrate that was available in the ground will have been leached away. And you can see over the crop there are areas of yellowing, which is made worse on the headlands. In terms of the next steps for this crop now, as we stand here in the middle of February, the first thing that comes to mind for the farmer to address is to apply some nitrogen. Winter barley is slightly different to wheat, whereby it nearly always follows a cereal, so the soil mineral nitrogen levels are a lot lower. Therefore, there's less there to feed the crop, so it needs to have more applied earlier than it does in wheat. And also, compared to wheat, winter barley needs to have a high ear population because it doesn't compensate by having larger heads in terms of grain number if the plant population isn't adequate. So for this crop, I plan to apply in the region of about 40% of its total nitrogen in the next 2 weeks. This particular crop is currently growth stage 22, so we have the main stem in 2 tillers, which, as I mentioned before, in terms of plant population, if we have 300 plants and 2 tillers, so we've got 3 stems per plant, it'll give us, in theory, an ear count of about 900 heads, which is perfect at this stage of the game. So in terms of disease levels, this particular variety isn't too bad in terms of its susceptibility. So my strategy for the crop protection in this particular field is to apply a protectant T0 fungicide along with the trace elements, plus a plant growth regulator to reduce the apical dominance of the main tiller, to encourage the development of the secondary tillers. That way it'll give me a higher shoot number, which is what we're ultimately trying to achieve. Plus the fact if we are delayed with the T1 fungicide, it stopped the disease from getting too far advanced, so we're in a more protectant situation rather than eradicant. This field has historically had a big issue with sterile brome weeds. So what I've done to try and reduce the pressure, because the options in barley are very limited in terms of herbicides nowadays for problem grass weeds, is we applied a pre-emergence flufenicet product called Vigon. Then we followed it up 6 weeks later with a half rate of Liberator, again more flufenicet. However, because this field has a high organic matter level, peaty soil, some of that herbicide has been absorbed onto the soil particles and allowed 1 or 2 weeds to break through that herbicide. For example, we have some oilseed rape down here which has escaped, which will probably need to be controlled at the T1 time. We're now standing in a crop of oilseed rape, which was drilled on the 19th of August. This particular crop, like that winter barley and the wheat, has established exceptionally well, owing to the open, good growthy autumn conditions that we experienced. In terms of plant population, this was drilled at around 45 seeds per square metre. It was established using a Sumo trio, and the seed was trickled behind. It was then rolled, slug pellets applied, and we've probably got in the region of about 75 to 80% establishment. Therefore the plant count is around 30 to 35 plants per square metre, which is ideal for this time of the year. In terms of agronomic challenges to this particular crop at the moment, there's not a lot of foliar disease. There are high levels of light leaf spot in some other crops in the area and further south, FOMA especially further south, but we generally don't suffer high levels of FOMA in this area. But this crop was treated with a fungicide in November with prothioconazole and tebuconazole in the form of Prosaro to protect against light leaf spot and FOMA disease, and it had boron applied as well alongside the propyzamide in terms of curb for weed control. We do tend to have to almost go prophylactically with slug pellets. We do trapping to measure the levels for the slugs, but we nearly always end up having to put pellets on at least once, sometimes twice, and the worst case scenarios up to 3 times. So I'm just going to dig up a plant to inspect the root development. So you can see on there we've got a long taproot which is probably severed off about here, so we've got nearly 30 centimetres or more of growth on there. In terms of the growth stage, we'll have about 9 or more leaves, and we're just beginning to enter into stem extension, early stages, so this crop will be looking for its first dose of nitrogen within the next 10 to 14 days.